Welcome back to the Jumpify Labs podcast. Today, I've got a fellow Navy veteran who's made the leap from flying aircraft and building systems in aerospace to actually coaching technical leaders at the executive level. Ron Higgs has engineered managers stop firefighting and start leading with confidence. Ron, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
The pleasure's all mine, Ron. We can start off here because you've worn many hats: Navy flight officer, aerospace engineer, COO. Now you're a coach. What's one story from your journey that really helped to shape who you are today?
I'll tell you a story about I work for a defense contractor, but I remember working with someone with whom I did not get along. Let's fast forward a couple years later, and this person ends up working for me. And so when this person was put on my team, it's one of those things I had to have a conversation. It's like, listen, we didn't really get along in the past, but I'm really willing to put all of that behind us and move forward. And so after a little while of getting to know this person, an opportunity came up for a team lead position. And I asked her what she wanted. And I said, okay, the lead position is open. Are you interested? She kind of lit up and said, yeah. And so we made an agreement on how everything was going to go. And I made her the lead. And she did a fantastic job. In fact, my boss pulled me in and goes, hey, I don't know what's going on here or what you did, but this person has the good reports. And she ended up with the best performance eval she ever had. And it was one of those things where give people a chance. And one of the tenets I live by is everyone you know or everyone you meet is fighting a battle you know nothing about. And so once I got to know her as a person and some of the challenges that she had and overcame, garnered a deep amount of respect for that person. It completely changed my outlook. From that point on, I knew leadership. I've always been interested in leadership, but that to this day is a powerful lesson for me. I shared that anecdote with a young person recently. And I go, you just never know what people are going through. Give them a chance.
I really like how you didn't hold any grudges because it's really easy to do that as well, right? Like if somebody crosses you one way, you might feel a little sour, but you gave them a shot and you empowered them to essentially excel at the position, which ultimately made you look good. So that's really cool.
Different styles of leadership, different styles, different interpersonal skills and things like that. And sometimes we need to look past those. And I was willing to step up and look past it.
Yeah, absolutely. After you went from the military, a flight officer, you got into corporate. You eventually got to this pivotal point where you left corporate to start your own thing. What was that moment like? Scary, exciting, maybe both?
Well, very scary, very exciting, both, as you said, because I went off to the Naval Academy when I was 17 years old, 3 weeks out of high school. And was in the military for a total of 24 years, went right into corporate America where there was always a paycheck coming and it was very structured. So when I decided to leave corporate and go off on my own, that was a big, big change. Very frightening. And I'm very, very glad that I did it. I think that I've learned a tremendous amount. I've learned a tremendous amount through just getting out of my comfort zone, but I've also learned a tremendous amount through failure. So some things worked, some things didn't. Created a lot of relationships and built a lot of skill sets that I don't think I would have built had I stayed where I was.
Yeah, that's really cool. I didn't know you could actually go into the Naval Academy straight out of high school.
Yeah, I ended up going to a prep school, but most people that go to the Naval Academy go straight out of high school.
How does that 24 years as a veteran show up at all, if in the way you lead or the way you coach?
Well, I think it shows up every day. I mean, in terms of discipline, there's nobody telling me what to do every day, right? I don't have anyone to report to, anybody telling me what to do or anything like that. I had to have the discipline to do all the things that I need to do every day as a self-employed person to move forward. I think it comes out that way. And in lots of different ways, I think we as veterans, I believe that somewhere in our psyche, in our why is the service above self, right? We were willing to put our lives on the line. So you do, I think all of us do, believe in serving causes greater than ourselves. There's that also that mission focus. Hey, what am I doing? We all took an oath to support and defend the Constitution of the United States, and we were able to map everything that we did in the military to that ultimate goal of supporting and defending the Constitution of the United States. And those are a few things: staying focused on the mission, you know, discipline and leadership. I think some of the things in leadership that we experience daily, folks who are in the military, I think have a better sense of leadership than those who are in the corporate.
Yeah, it kind of does force you to. The people that are good anyway, they tend to go up a little bit quicker, and then all of a sudden, in my case, I think I was a 20-year-old kid or maybe 21 leading guys who were in their 30s because I became a work center supervisor. And that was something I had to really learn and to grow into before I started to garner the respect from my peers. But they see the hard work, and absolutely hard work can still just take you pretty far in comparison to most people who just kind of wait for things to happen for them. I do want to take a bit of a pivot towards
Sure.
the type of clients that you coach. You are
Yeah.
coaching and working with a lot of engineers. You yourself were an engineer. Why is the leap from individual contributor for the engineering type going from contributor to manager so difficult for engineers overall?
Well, there's the mindset change, number one, from technical focus to people focus. Because in a leadership role, you have to be focused on people. Now you have all these responsibilities. All of these people who may have been your peers now have to be led. They have to have performance evals. They have to be motivated. And you're responsible for that. Because some people, a lot of people get promoted because they're good at something. And it happens in every industry. Hey, you're a good salesperson. You would be a great manager of the sales team or a great, insert your noun here, you will be a great manager of the team. So engineers a lot of times get promoted because they're good technically. They're technically astute. They're good. Hey, you're a really good engineer. We're going to make you the engineering manager. Now, all of a sudden, all the skills that you showed to get promoted are not the skills you need to succeed as a leader. And you don't want to lose the technical stuff because that's why you became an engineer in the first place. And a lot of companies don't offer any help. They don't offer anything in terms of leadership development or things like that. So the number one thing I think is just the mindset shift from technical focus to people.
Absolutely, because you're turning them in from the doer who's essentially on the computer, looking at charts, drafting, doing all these things that engineers do, to all of a sudden being a people person or a delegator who's kind of tasking others on how to actually do the job, or maybe just tasking projects, whatever. How are you actually helping leaders make that move from doer to delegator?
Well, again, first, it's helping them cope with the mindset shift. I think just being aware of the shift in mindset helps. And there's a couple of things you do. One is that there's this self awareness. I think as a leader, you have to be a little bit more self aware. One CEO that I worked with in a startup where I was the COO, he said, attitude has momentum. And I really like that quote. And I remember it because now you are the leader and your attitude and your emotions really do have momentum throughout the organization that you lead, no matter how many people are a part of it. So, one thing, the first thing is to become a little bit more self aware. And even simple stories like, know how we, when we're on vacation or or we're not in work, we're with our friends or we're sitting at a dinner table or a Thanksgiving table and we're telling stories about our bosses. And most of them aren't good stories. You know, they're telling horror stories about work. And guess what my boss did? Well, guess what? That boss is now you. And your folks are talking about you like that. And so start to think in terms of what kind of legacy you're leaving behind. So that's the first thing. Then you move on to, okay, you've got to start delegating things. And I've talked to a lot of engineering managers lately. It's like it's just easier for me to do these things myself instead of have other teams do it. Well, you're not delegating to offload your work. You are delegating to help other people grow. And so that's one of those realizations that your job as a leader is to create other leaders, let other people solve problems themselves, give other people challenges, let them step up. And guess what? You will actually learn something from them. So it's difficult to let go, but it's a thing that they have to do. And really, I think my value as a coach is being from the outside looking in. Who's telling them this internally? Nobody. They may not have a peer network. They may not have a mentor in the company or things like that. So they have to realize these things. And it's on me as a coach to point them out. Sometimes, again, just being that person that's holding them accountable and that person that's looking in from the outside is most of the value.
Right. Absolutely. You did mention the word revelation. You have to kind of help people have that revelation on their own. On our prior call, you mentioned that you actually talked engineers out of quitting those leadership roles. What's one thing that maybe you told them that helped them come to that revelation on their own where they actually flipped the switch and stayed on board?
Well, talking about their careers, do you want to advance in your career? And let me back up. I like to talk with people who have said to themselves at some point, I am tired of this people management thing, whatever it is. I just want to go back to being an engineer. Those are the people that I like to talk to because really they in terms of leadership development, just the conversation that we had, do you understand now that you should focus more on people than technical stuff? Do you now understand that you have to have a little bit more of a big picture view as a leader? As an individual contributor, you could work and stay in the weeds the entire time. But now, as a leader, you have to have a general understanding of the big picture, the organizational goals, and where your team fits into all that. You also need to communicate with other stakeholders. You have to communicate with technical people, HR people, marketing people, all those folks who don't speak tech. So the bottom line is what kind of legacy are you leaving behind? And again, talked about is realizing that you're not delegating your work to others so that they can just do it to offload you. You're helping to grow people, able to create more leaders. And so don't you want an organization that are filled with people who are self-motivated like you, people who can think on their own like you. Those are the people that you want working for you. So here's your chance. You want to leave a legacy and an impact behind, you leave it with people, and that legacy will stay long after you leave.
Hmm. And how are you coaching leaders or people that have made this transition into leadership? How do you coach them when they say things like, "It's faster if I just do it myself"? Because
Well,
I'm sure that's something that a lot of people would say.
it may be faster, but those people need to grow. Those people need to grow and be challenged because one day when you get promoted, who's going to step into your job? So I used to think of it as a leader. I used to think that my job was to prepare everyone on my team for their next job. And I never worried about whether or not their next job was mine. And going back to what you asked me in the military, remember in the military, we everybody moved forward. Nobody stayed stagnant. As soon as you walked into a unit for that finite amount of time, you were being trained to replace someone. And as time went by, then you starting training people to replace you so that you could move on. And so if you look at that and say, somebody's going to have to eventually step in and take my job. Who do I want that person to be? Let me start training all of these folks and seeing who would be the best person to do it. Because again, making these folks realize that their job is now to create other leaders.
That's interesting you say that because I used to always say the same thing. I was always training the new guys to take my job because I'd always tell them, "There's no way I can level up if you don't level up to take my spot." So I don't know if that's just a Navy thing or I don't know, but you're the only other person that I've heard actually say that.
I
So
think in the military in general, not just in the Navy. I mean, that's the way the system is designed. And
Yeah,
remember, we depend on each other for our lives. And so we want the people coming behind us to be the absolute best person that they can be, because that
exactly.
person may save my life. And the same thing goes for the person that was training you. Now, we didn't call it coaching then, but there's lots of coaching. There's coaching, there's training, there's mentorship, there's things like there's teaching. And knowing the difference between all of those is important as well.
It's so different too, because I have been in the corporate space where I was also an engineer, and it was not like that. People would hold on to their information, their knowledge and skill sets because in the in the military, you can't really get fired unless you mess up super grave, you do something really dumb. But in corporate, there's a bit of a scarcity mindset where
Yeah.
I can train somebody and then I'll just get laid off. So I love how you subscribe to that same school of thought. I want to ask you if you could design a leadership flight simulator for engineering managers, maybe what are some two or three scenarios, one to three scenarios, or anything that just comes to mind? What kind of scenarios would you put in it?
Well, one scenario I could think of is building relationships, because I think that that is one of the most important skill sets you can have. And a lot of people are like, hey, what are you talking about? Different human beings are motivated by different things. So you don't know what motivates a specific person unless you build some kind of relationship with them. And so I actually do have this exercise in my coaching, and I'll try to make it as simple as possible. It's one of those, who would you assign to which task? And you look at the person's resume and say, it's obvious that based on their resume, that I should assign Jay to task A, Ron to task B, and Sally to task C. Then after getting to know those, you find out that one of them, you know what? Their family is in construction and they have a background in construction. And one of the projects is a construction project. And looking on paper through their resume and the things that they've done, you wouldn't necessarily assign them to that project. But now that you know them as a person, you go, hey, this person really is the best person for that project, because you know what they do outside of work and you know a little bit more of them as a person. And I'll also tell you another story. When I was engineering manager, I had some folks on the team come up to me and go, hey, this person is slacking. They're really not doing well. They're not doing their job. This guy's a dirt bag, falling on his face, whatever the case may be. And I went, no, because I developed a relationship with that person and I knew he was the retired Navy Command Master Chief. Okay. Command Master Chief, right? Slacker is not in his DNA. It was incapable. That person is incapable of being a slacker. So I knew there must have been something going on. So I just called him in and said, hey, what's happening? We're used to seeing above, your usual outstanding performance is waning a little bit. Something going on in your life that we should know about here. And opened up. Turned out something was something big. And it was like, okay, so here's what we can do for you. Why don't I pull you off of this project, do this, reassign somebody else, give you some time to get your act together, and then you can come on back in a couple months and start with this project. A shock, surprise that we were willing to do that. You can't do those things for yourself. But the bottom line is, I built a relationship with him, and I knew that he was a Navy Command Master Chief, and I knew that he was incapable of being a slacker.
Absolutely, a CMC of a command would not be, but they don't get there by being lazy.
Exactly.
That's for sure. Okay, what's one quick win that a CEO can implement tomorrow to make their team a little bit more efficient, a little bit more tighter, make their leadership more effective?
Well, here's one thing that I think a lot of us had to learn is that, when you get put in a leadership position, I think you default to showing people how to do things your way. Like, this is the right way to do it. This isn't the right. But remember, there's more than one way to do things right. And so instead of telling people how to do things, tell them what the end state is and what done looks like. This is where we are. This is where we're getting to. And this is what it looks like when it's done, and let them do it. Because then you'll find that you may learn something. And I run into a lot of folks, especially business owners, who are the bottleneck for every decision in the company. People come to me for all the decisions. Well, what happens when you go on vacation? Everything comes to a complete halt. I used to measure my progress on how well my progress and how well I was doing based on how well my job got done when I wasn't there. So if everything went well when I wasn't there, I considered myself successful, not replaceable or anything like that. So give people, if you're not already, stop telling people what to do, especially really smart people. Just tell them what the end state looks like and let them go.
Right. I think that's a thing I've been finding in different organizations is that you have sales managers and they bring on people and they kind of crack the whip when that's not really what they want to be doing, because people who are in the industry of sales, they're usually pretty driven it already anyway. Yes, you're going to have a portion of them, but if it's usually because there's something deeper, they don't fully align, something a lot more deeply rooted than just not doing the actual work. Appreciate your time, Ron. Where can people actually connect with you online so that if they're looking for maybe some assistance with their own leadership, where can they find you?
LinkedIn is my primary channel. Go to my LinkedIn page, connect with me, read some of my posts, like some of my posts, sign up for my newsletter, all of that stuff. And then I do have a website, www.wolfmanagementsolutions.com, but you can get there just as easily through LinkedIn. So I'll just leave it at that.
Outstanding. All right. Thank you so much, Ron, for sharing us with some of your wisdom. If you like episodes like this, hearing stories from other people in the trenches, actively building business, actively helping other people succeed through their own coaching or through their managerial experience, be sure to turn it blah, blah, be sure to tune in for more. Thanks so much. My name is Jay. Talk soon.
Thanks for the opportunity, Jay.